Good morning and welcome to Mike Ferry TV. A couple of weeks ago, we had our annual production retreat, this time Anaheim, California. And during this production retreat, we had some open Q&A sessions take place. We have a great client down in Yuma, Arizona named Carol, and she went up to the microphone and asked a very interesting and I think very important question for all of us to look at and answer. And the question she brought up is, and now first of all, Carol's a very productive agent. She's doing in excess of 90 transactions a year. And here's what she asked in front of 2,000 people at our production retreat. She goes, okay, with family, with business, with personal life, with getting exercise, having some time off, how do these people that are big top producers manage their time? And I had to laugh and smile because what she was not recognizing is she is a big top producer doing 90 plus transactions a year. Wouldn't all of us like to be burdened with the fact we're doing 90 transactions a year? No question about it. But the reason her question was so important, because before she had a chance to listen to my answer, I asked 2,000 people this question. I said, does anybody in this room have any challenges or problems with time management? And then I said, Carol, before they raise their hands, watch the audience carefully. And I said, by a show of hands, does anybody have a problem with time management? 2,000 hands went up. Because if we look at the real estate business, or at least since I've been involved, which is now 50 plus years, it is the common problem all real estate people have. And the reason is multifold. First of all, because we're independent contractors, we pretty much can do what we want when we want, and there's nobody there to manage our schedule. If you worked at an airline and you were a pilot, you have certain times you have to be at work to fly the plane. If you're working in a doctor's office as a receptionist, there's certain hours you have to be there to schedule, handle paperwork, etc. If you're working in the bank and you just show up whenever you choose to, like real estate people do, you get fired from the bank. In my company, our salespeople work from 7:30 to 4:30. They have to be there at a certain time. So the challenge that each of us face is the fact that we're independent contractors and we have the right to do or not to do anything at a given time. And yet every time I sit down with anybody that's either very productive or on the way to high productivity, the key to their success is their schedule and their ability to follow that schedule on a regular basis. So the first question, of course, I would ask you is, do you have a schedule? Do you have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever days of the week you work? Do you have a schedule where you outline what you do each day at certain times? And I would have to venture to guess, don't get mad, 90% of you don't, which is why you can't create the productivity you want. And then if you have a schedule, do you actually follow it? Because it's one thing to have a schedule. Second thing is to actually do something that schedule actually asks you to do. And it's so interesting to me how so many of us say we have a schedule, and then I could call you or send you an email anytime during the day and you can respond instantly, which means you're not on your schedule. So what I did is for today, since we know this is a problem, and here we are now, the first part of February, and we know that the schedule is critical to obviously February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December, and making sure we get done what we want to get done. I went through and I checked off 8 or 10 points in relationship to time management and scheduling that might help you, or at least trigger in your mind a better way to manage your time. So let's work under the assumption your goal is to manage your time better. Your goal is to get more out of each day, to be more productive. I didn't say your goal is to sell 50 or 100 homes, to get the most out of each day so you can be more productive. So listen carefully. I wrote down first, your schedule should always be based upon the goals you've set for yourself and not anything else. Too often real estate people will say, what is your schedule? And they say, well, I do this, this, and this. Okay, that's what I'll do. And I go, well, wait a minute. If that person's goal is to do 50 deals and yours is to do 10, why would you follow that schedule? It makes no sense. In real estate, there are certain activities that have to be done. You have to prospect, you have to do lead follow-up, you have to pre-qualify, and you have to go on appointments. That's the real estate business. So how much of those activities should be in your schedule each day? Now, understand, if you actually do prospect every day and do lead follow-up and pre-qualify your buyers and sellers and go on presentations, whatever goal you've set for the year, you're probably going to surpass it because now you're intensely involved in the basics of the business, which is what creates high productivity. But remember that the schedule you have should not be the schedule of anybody else. It should be a schedule based upon your goals, your objectives, what you want to do. If you really are doing, say, 5, 8, 10, 15 transactions a year, you're going to discover there's not much in your schedule because you don't have much to do that kind of productivity. And then the creation of a productivity schedule is going to force you to higher levels. Second thing I wrote down is treat your business as if it were a real job, which makes your schedule easier to follow. In a real job, and you've probably had one, you had to be to work at a certain time, take your break at a certain time, go to lunch at a certain time, afternoon break, and then go home. That's what business is all about. I keep saying to real estate people, if you were to treat this as if you were on another job, you probably would be more productive. You'd certainly be happier because you would be doing certain things religiously each day and you'd get more done. But why do we go into real estate? So we don't have to have a real job. And that's, of course, the challenge that we face all the time. I wrote down the third thought for you on time management. Do the most productive thing you can possibly do for 30 minutes out of each hour of each day that you work. All right, what is the most productive thing you can do? Should you be calling back some of your leads? Probably. Should you be following up to make sure that the appointments you have are going to actually come about? Probably. Should you pre-qualify every buyer and seller more carefully? Probably. Should you prepare a little bit better for the listing appointment? Probably. Should you practice your scripts so when you go on the listing appointment, you're highly effective? Probably. Should you prospect at least a little bit every single day? Probably. Well, if we say to ourselves, these are the things I want to do 30 minutes out of each hour that I work, and you're working, let's say, 8, 9 hours a day, which means then, now listen carefully, you're putting in 4 to 4.5 hours a day of high productivity. But then I also wrote down, remember your schedule is a working document. Be flexible. You know, it's going to change a little bit. You're going to have interruptions, but don't every single day allow the flexibility to take you off the schedule. I don't want you to say to yourself, well, 7:15 to 7:20 and 7:20 to 7:35 and 7:35 to 7:40. We're not talking about that kind of a schedule. Watch, I have to prospect, I have to do lead follow-up, I have to pre-qualify, I have to go on appointments. This is the basic fundamentals of the business. And then we have the flexibility in the fact that something does come up, but just don't make the flexibility be the habit that runs your life. And then I'm going to suggest to you to look carefully at what in your schedule is not working for you. Is there any parts of your schedule that are not working? If you've got something that you plan every day and you simply never do it, why have it in your schedule? Now, remember, if what you never do is prospecting and it's in your schedule, you're not going to get the production you want, period. Remember, I can wait for business to find me, I can buy it through advertising and marketing, or I can go find it. So if what's in your schedule is prospecting and it doesn't work for you, you got to figure out a way to make it work. And then I wrote down the following. Following your schedule is simply a habit like any other habit you have. Following your schedule is a habit like any other habit you have. The more you do it, the easier it is, and of course, the more productive you are. But remember, it takes a lot of time to create a habit. Habits don't come about because you sat down one day and said, I have a new habit. It doesn't work that way. But then the next thought I wrote down, which is really critical, I think, to everybody's long-term productivity and success. There are 3 parts to a Mike Ferry trained agent's day. The morning routine, from the time you get to the office to 11:30 or 12. What do you do during that time? See, I believe that if we can get you to master your morning routine, okay, what are you doing from basically the time you arrive to 11:30, 12 o'clock? And then we have, of course, the early afternoon routine, 12 o'clock to 3, which should be preparation, pre-qualifying, making sure your listing packages are out to the sellers in advance, any administrative work on transactions, following up with clients that are in process with you. And then, of course, we have the third part is what we call presentation time, which is from 3 o'clock until about 7 o'clock, where either you're showing property to a highly qualified, motivated buyer or you're on a listing presentation. So in essence, from when I start to noon, from noon till about 2 o'clock to maybe 2:30 or 3, and then, of course, presentation time. If you think about that, that makes for a pretty great day. And then the last two thoughts I wrote down, the morning schedule should be untouchable. It should always be made in concrete, intense and productive. Then I wrote last, the afternoon schedule, leave follow-up, previewing property, pre-qualifying buyers and sellers, going on appointments, and if you have none of those to take place, more prospecting. Carol's question was excellent. I think she thought that a person doing 150 deals has a different life than a person doing 90. No, at 90 deals, you're a phenomenal agent. You may be at 10 deals and you're a phenomenal agent. The only way to get to 20, to 40, to 80, to 100 is to manage your time at the highest level, to be very intense about it, get the most out of each day, and create the habits you have to create. So I hope as we start the second month of 2015, this message resonates in your head and gets you moving in the right direction with your schedule. In either case, I'll look forward to seeing you next week.